My husband handed me a cup of chamomile tea with a smile I had trusted for 5 years. He told me it would help me relax after a long week of closing mergers and acquisitions. I did not drink it. Instead, I poured it into the potted snake plant in the corner of the living room while he stepped into the hallway to take a call. Then I lay down on the velvet sofa and pretended to drift off. 10 minutes later, the back door creaked open. It was not a doctor coming to check on my recent migraines. It was my husband Julian, his brother Darius, and his brother's wife, Ashley. And they were not there to help me. They were there to discuss how to have me committed to a psychiatric facility so they could seize my assets. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever slept with one eye open because the person next to you felt like a stranger. My name is Keisha, and I am 34 years old. I am a senior corporate lawyer specializing in high-stakes mergers. I built my career on reading people detecting lies in boardrooms and protecting assets. Yet somehow I missed the biggest lie sleeping right next to me. For the past 3 weeks, I had been waking up with splitting headaches and gaps in my memory. I would lose hours of my day. I would find my keys in the refrigerator or my important files in the trash. Julian told me I was overworking myself. He told me I was becoming forgetful and aggressive. He told me I needed rest. He was the perfect, doting husband, always ready with a warm beverage and a soft blanket. But that evening, as I held the ceramic mug in my hands, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a tiny cluster of white powder that had not fully dissolved, swirling at the bottom of the honey-colored liquid. I did not panic. Panic is for people who do not have a plan. I walked silently to the large potted snake plant near the window and emptied the mug into the soil. Then I arranged myself on the sofa, let my arm dangle limply over the edge and closed my eyes. I focused on my breathing, making it slow and rhythmic, just like I did during meditation. I heard Julian walk back into the room. He whispered my name. Keisha. I did not move. He nudged my shoulder. I remained limp. Then I heard the sound of the electronic lock on the back door disengaging. Footsteps entered the house. Not stealthy footsteps, but loud, confident ones. I recognized the heavy tread of my brother-in-law Darius immediately. But it was the sharp clicking of heels on my hardwood floors that made my stomach turn. It was Ashley. "Is the bitch out yet?" Ashley asked. Her voice was not hushed. It was loud and dripping with a mixture of boredom and disdain. "I hate coming over here. This house smells like arrogance." I kept my eyes closed, but my other senses went into overdrive. I could smell Ashley's cloying vanilla perfume as she walked past the sofa where I lay. She did not even pause to check if I was breathing. "She is out cold," Julian replied. His voice lacked the warmth he always used when speaking to me. It sounded flat and transactional. "I gave her a double dose tonight just to be sure. She will not wake up until noon tomorrow." "Good, because I do not have all day," Ashley said. She sounded like she was walking around the room touching things. I heard the sound of a ceramic vase being lifted and set back down. "You really need to redecorate once she is gone, Julian. This whole Afrocentric art theme is so aggressive, it gives me a headache." "Focus, Ashley," Darius grunted. "We are not here to critique the decor. We are here to find the liquidity." "Where is the safe, Julian?" "It is behind the Basquiat print in the study," Julian said. I lay there frozen. The Basquiat print was my most prized possession, a gift I bought for myself after making partner. Behind it was a wall safe that contained not just emergency cash, but the deeds to my 3 rental properties and my grandmother's vintage jewelry. Only I knew the combination, or so I thought. I heard them move into the study, which was adjacent to the living room. I cracked my right eye open just a fraction of an inch. Through the sliver of vision, I saw the 3 of them. They were not looking at me. They were huddled around the painting. Julian lifted it off the wall with a grunt and set it on the floor. "You are sure she did not change the code?" Darius asked. His voice had a tremor of nervousness in it. The guys from Vegas are not going to wait another week, Julian. They want their money. She trusts me implicitly, Julian scoffed. He punched numbers into the keypad. Beep, 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 click. The sound of the safe opening echoed in the silent house. She uses her mother's birthday for everything. She is sentimental like that. Poor thing thinks she is so smart because she passed the bar exam, but she is just a lonely woman desperate to be loved. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me that had nothing to do with the pills I had not taken. He was mocking my love for my late mother. He was mocking the trust I had placed in him. I wanted to leap up and scream. I wanted to grab the letter opener from the desk and drive them out of my house. But I stayed still. I needed to know everything. "It is empty!" Ashley shrieked. Her voice was shrill. "What do you mean it is empty? There is nothing in here but some old papers. Where is the cash, Julian? You said she keeps at least 50 grand in here." Julian sounded frantic. "It has to be here. She showed me the stack last month. Maybe she moved it. Maybe she is on to you," Darius said. "No," Julian insisted. "She is completely out of it. The pills are working. She thinks she is losing her mind. Yesterday she cried because she could not remember where she parked the car. I parked it down the street while she was in the shower, but she believed she lost it." "She is crumbling, Darius. Just stick to the plan." "What is the plan again? Because right now I am staring at an empty safe and a debt collector who wants to break my legs," Darius snapped. "We pivot," Ashley said. Her voice took on a cold, calculating tone that terrified me more than Darius's aggression. "We do not need the cash today. We need control of the assets. Julian, how is the paperwork coming along?" "It is almost ready," Julian said. "I have Dr. Stevens preparing the evaluation. He is going to testify that her stress levels have induced a psychotic break. We have the incidents documented, the lost car, the outbursts at dinner last week, the forgetfulness. Once we get her committed for a 72-hour hold, I can file for emergency conservatorship. I will argue that she is a danger to herself and her finances. And then we sell the rental properties." Ashley finished. "I already have a buyer lined up for the brownstone. We can wash the money through my old escrow account. No one will trace it." I lay there and listened, as my husband, the man I vowed to love and cherish, plotted to strip me of my freedom and my life's work. He did not just want my money, he wanted to erase me. He wanted to lock me away in a facility, medicated and drooling, while he played the grieving husband living in my house and spending my earnings. Julian walked back into the living room. I sensed him standing over me. "She really is beautiful," he muttered. "It is a shame she has to be so difficult. If she just shared her money, we would not have to do this." "She is a cold bitch," Julian Ashley called out from the study. "Stop romanticizing her. She treats you like an employee. She thinks she is better than us just because she has a fancy degree. Grab her phone. We need to transfer enough to cover the interest for Darius." I felt Julian's hand slide into my pocket. He pulled out my smartphone, then he grabbed my hand. His skin felt clammy against mine. He pressed my thumb onto the sensor. I had to force every muscle in my body to remain limp. I had to let him manipulate my hand like a rag doll. "It unlocked," he said. "Okay, let me see. Bank of America app. Transfer." "Make it small," Ashley warned. "Under 5,000, so it does not trigger a fraud alert." "Done," Julian said. 4,000 sent to the Shell account. That should buy us a few days with the sharks." "Let's go," Darius said. "This place creeps me out. It feels like she is watching us." They put the painting back. They locked the empty safe. They left through the back door, laughing as they walked to their car. I waited until I heard the engine fade into the distance. Then I bolted upright. I ran to the bathroom and retched until my stomach hurt. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were wild. My hair was disheveled. I washed my face with freezing cold water. I did not cry. I looked at the woman in the reflection. She was not a victim. She was a prosecutor preparing for the biggest case of her life. I spent the rest of the night awake. I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the dark watching the street. At 3:00 a.m., I packed a small go bag with my passport, a burner phone I kept for client emergencies, and a hard drive containing my encrypted financial records. I hid the bag in the ventilation shaft in the guest closet. I needed to act normal. I needed to play their game until I could flip the board. The next morning, I heard Julian stirring upstairs. He must have come back late and slept in the guest room to maintain the charade. I went into the kitchen and started the coffee maker. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. When I turned around, I nearly dropped the coffee pot. Ashley was sitting at my kitchen island. She was wearing my white silk robe, the one with my initials embroidered on the pocket. She was drinking from my favorite mug. Her hair was messy and she looked entirely too comfortable. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Ashley said with a smirk. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes were cold. "You were out cold. Julian was so worried about you. We stopped by to check on you and he insisted I stay the night to help out today since you have been so fragile lately." I stared at the robe. It felt like a violation more intimate than the theft. She was wearing my skin. She was claiming my territory. "I must have been very tired," I said. My voice sounded raspy, which worked in my favor. "I do not remember you coming over. You were screaming," Keisha Ashley said, taking a sip of coffee, "screaming about spiders on the ceiling. It was terrifying. Julian had to hold you down until you passed out. You really need to see a doctor. This stress is destroying your mind." The gaslighting was textbook. If I had not been awake, if I had drunk that tea, I might have believed her. I might have doubted my own reality. But I knew the truth. "I am fine," I said, reaching for a glass of water. "I just need to get to the office. I have a deposition at 10. "Oh, honey, no." Ashley stood up and blocked my path. She was shorter than me, but she held herself with the unearned confidence of someone who has never been told no. "Julian already called your firm. He told them you are taking a sick day. You are not going anywhere in this state. Look at you. You are trembling." I looked at my hands. I was trembling, but not from fear, from rage. "I appreciate the concern, Ashley, but I am going to work," I said, stepping around her. Julian walked into the kitchen then. He was wearing his pajamas and looking the picture of the concerned husband. "Keisha, baby, please listen to Ashley," he said, reaching for me. "You are not well. I found you passed out on the floor last night. You barely know what day it is." I looked at him. The man I had shared a bed with. The man I had planned to have children with. He looked at me with eyes full of fake pity while he plotted to lock me away. "I am going to work, Julian," I said, my voice ice cold. "Do not touch me." He recoiled slightly at my tone. He was not used to me being cold. I was usually the warm one, the accommodating one. "Fine," he said, holding up his hands. "If you want to embarrass yourself, go ahead. But do not blame me when you collapse in court." I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. I did not look back. I got into my car and locked the doors immediately. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I did not go to the office. I drove straight to a private medical lab across town. A lab that had no affiliation with my primary care doctor or my insurance. "I need a full toxicology panel," I told the technician. "And I need it rushed. Test for everything. Sedatives, antipsychotics, poisons, everything." After the lab, I drove to the office of Big Mike. Mike was a former detective I had helped pro bono when he was wrongfully accused of misconduct 5 years ago. He ran a private investigation firm now. He owed me. "Keisha," Mike said when I walked in, "you look like you have seen a ghost." "I am living with 3 of them, Mike," I said. "I need you to dig. I need to know everything about Julian, his brother Darius, and that woman Ashley. I need bank records. I need phone logs. I need to know who they owe money to. And I need it yesterday." Mike looked at me and nodded. He did not ask questions. He just opened his laptop. I went to my office building, but I did not go up to my floor. I sat in my car in the parking garage and monitored my home security system from my phone. I had installed hidden cameras 3 months ago when items started going missing. Julian thought they were disconnected. He was wrong. On the screen, I saw Ashley walking through my living room. She was holding a trash bag. She was sweeping the soil from the snake plant into the bag. She knew. She realized the plant was dead. She realized I had poured the tea out. I watched as she pulled out her phone and called Julian. I could not hear the audio, but I could read her lips. She knows. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. Baby, I am so sorry we fought. Come home early. I am making your favorite dinner. Let's start over. I stared at the message. The trap was set. They knew that I knew. The game of cat and mouse was over. Now it was a hunt. And they thought they were the hunters. They had no idea they were walking into a lion's den. I texted back, "Okay, honey. I will be home by 6. I love you." I put the phone down. I checked the live feed from the camera again. Ashley was now in my bedroom going through my jewelry box. I zoomed in. She was pocketing my diamond earrings. I felt a cold calm settle over me. I was not going home to eat dinner. I was going home to end this. But first I needed the toxicology results. My phone rang. It was the lab, Mrs. Vance, the technician said. "We have your preliminary results. You need to go to the emergency room immediately. You have lethal levels of benzodiazepines in your system. If you take one more dose, it could stop your heart." I hung up. I did not go to the ER. I had a dinner reservation with my husband. When I pulled into my driveway at 5:55 p.m., the house looked normal. Warm yellow light spilled from the windows. It looked like a home, but I knew it was a stage. I walked to the front door. I did not use my key. I rang the doorbell. I wanted them to come to me. Julian opened the door. He was wearing an apron. He was smiling, but there was sweat on his upper lip. "Hey, beautiful," he said. I smiled back, a smile that did not reach my eyes. "Hello, Julian," I said. "I hope you are hungry." I walked inside. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. It smelled delicious. It smelled like death. Ashley was sitting on the sofa. She had changed back into her street clothes, but she was still wearing my diamond earrings. She thought I wouldn't notice. "Hey, Keisha," she said. "Feeling better?" "Much," I said. "I feel awake." Darius came out of the kitchen holding a bottle of wine. My wine. A vintage I had been saving for a special occasion. "Let's have a toast," Darius said, pouring 4 glasses. "To family. To family," I repeated. I took the glass. I watched the dark red liquid swirl. I knew there was more than just grapes in there. I looked at Julian. He was watching me intently, waiting for me to drink. I raised the glass to my lips. Then I pretended to stumble. I let the glass slip from my fingers. It shattered on the floor, splashing red wine all over Ashley's white pants. "Oh my God!" Ashley screamed, jumping up. "You clumsy idiot, I am so sorry," I said, my voice flat. My hand slipped. It must be the stress. Or maybe it is the side effects. Side effects of what? Julian asked sharply. "Of betrayal," I said. The room went silent. "Just kidding," I laughed. A cold, hollow laugh. "I meant the medication Dr. Stevens prescribed. You know, for my psychotic break." Julian relaxed visibly. "You saw Dr. Stevens?" I lied. I nodded. "He said I need a lot of rest." "Well then," Julian said, quickly pouring another glass. "Drink up. It will help you sleep." I took the new glass. I looked him in the eye. "I bet it will," I said. But I did not drink. I walked to the window and looked out. "Is that a new car in the driveway?" I asked. Darius looked nervous. "Oh yeah, it is a rental." "It is nice," I said. "Plenty of trunk space. Good for moving heavy objects, or bodies." Everyone laughed nervously. "You have such a dark sense of humor today," Keisha Ashley said. I turned around. I found the toxicology report in my purse. I placed it on the coffee table. "I also found this," I said. "What is that?" Julian asked. "It says I am being poisoned," I said. The silence was deafening. "That is ridiculous," Julian stammered. "Is it?" I asked. I looked at the snake plant, the one Ashley had emptied. "Where is my plant, Julian?" I asked. The one that was right there. It died, he said. I threw it out. It died overnight, I asked. That is fast. Almost like it was poisoned. Stop it, Darius said, stepping forward. You are acting crazy. This is exactly why you need help. Help, I asked. Like a conservatorship. Julian's face went pale. How did you? I know about the debt, Julian, I said. 500,000 to the sharks. I know about the real estate scheme, Ashley. I know about the fake will. They stared at me. The masks were off. There was no more pretense of love, only predatory hunger. So what if you know? Darius sneered. Who are you going to tell? You are a mental patient. No one will believe you. We have the doctor on our side, Ashley said. We have the paperwork. You are going away, Keisha. And we are going to enjoy spending your money. Julian moved toward me. He had a syringe in his hand. He had been hiding it behind his back. Don't make this hard, Keisha, he said. Just let us give you the shot. It will be easier. I backed up against the wall. You really think I came here alone? I asked. What? Julian stopped. I hired Big Mike, I said. Who is Big Mike? Darius asked. At that moment, the front door kicked open. A massive man filled the frame. He was holding a tire iron. I am Big Mike, he said, and I hate poisoners. Julian dropped the syringe. Ashley screamed. Darius tried to run for the back door, but Mike blocked him. I walked over to the coffee table. I picked up my wine glass. I threw the contents into Julian's face. He sputtered and wiped his eyes. That was just wine, I said. I am not like you. I looked at them, cowering, caught. Get out of my house, I said. We are not leaving without the money, Ashley yelled. She was desperate. You are leaving, I said. Because the police are on their way, and I just sent the toxicology report to the district attorney, along with the video footage of you breaking into my safe. Video footage, Julian whispered. Smile, I said, pointing to the hidden camera in the smoke detector. You are the stars of a very incriminating movie. Sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting closer. Run, Darius said to Julian. Run! They scrambled. They tripped over each other trying to get out the door. They jumped into their cars and peeled out of the driveway. I watched them go. Mike looked at me. You okay, boss? I looked at the shattered glass on the floor. I looked at the empty spot where my plant used to be. I am fine, Mike, I said. But I wasn't fine. I was furious. And this was just the beginning. They thought running away would save them. They didn't know I had already frozen their assets. They didn't know I had sent the evidence of Ashley's real estate fraud to the licensing board. They didn't know the sharks they owed money to were actually clients of my firm, and I had just bought their debt. I wasn't just going to send them to jail. I was going to own them. I picked up the phone and dialed my assistant. Cancel my appointments for tomorrow, I said. I have some hunting to do, to be continued. The white sheet of paper trembling in my hands was not a contract or a settlement agreement. It was a death warrant signed by the man I married. The toxicology report from the private lab was clinical and cold, listing levels of benzodiazepines in my blood that were nearly 3 times the therapeutic dose. The technician had looked at me with wide, fearful eyes when he handed it over, urging me to go to a hospital because the concentration was high enough to cause respiratory failure in someone with a lower tolerance. I did not go to the hospital. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the chemical proof that my husband was not just a thief but a predator. He had been microdosing me for weeks, building up the levels in my system so that when the final massive dose hit, it would look like an overdose or a psychotic break, not a murder. I folded the paper and slid it into my briefcase next to the hard drive. This was Exhibit A. I started the engine and drove toward the south side of the city. I was not going to the police yet. The police required probable cause and warrants and time I did not have. I needed someone who operated in the gray areas, someone who owed me his life. Big Mike ran a private security firm out of a converted warehouse that smelled of cigar smoke and old leather. 5 years ago, he was a decorated detective facing a corruption charge he did not commit. I took his case pro bono when everyone else told him to plead out. I destroyed the prosecution's witness on the stand and got Mike his badge back and his full pension. He retired a year later, but he never forgot who saved him. When I walked into his office, Mike stood up from his desk. He was a mountain of a man, 6'5", with shoulders that filled the doorway, but his eyes were sharp and kind. He took one look at my face and locked the door. I did not have to sugarcoat it. I told him everything. I told him about the tea, the conversation I overheard, the safe, and the pills. I laid the toxicology report on his desk. Mike read it in silence, his jaw tightening until a vein pulsed in his temple. He did not ask if I was sure. He did not tell me to go to marriage counseling. He opened a drawer, pulled out a fresh burner phone, and handed it to me. "I need everything on Julian." I said, my voice steady, despite the rage burning in my chest. "I need to know who he owes how much and who he is really sleeping with. And I need a full background check on his brother Darius and his wife Ashley. Dig deep, Mike. I want to know where she lost her real estate license and why she is so desperate for cash." Mike nodded, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. "Go to work, Keisha. Act normal. By the time you clock out, I will have their entire lives on a flash drive. And Keisha, if he tries to hand you so much as a glass of water, you pour it out." I drove to my office building in downtown, the glass skyscraper gleaming like a beacon of the life I had built for myself. This was my domain. Here I was not a victim. I was a shark. I walked past the receptionist with a smile that did not reach my eyes and went straight to my corner office. I locked the door and sat at my desk, needing the familiarity of my work to ground me. But when I woke my computer, a red notification blinked in the corner of the screen. "System security alert. Multiple failed login attempts." My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked the details. The attempts had happened last night around 2:00 a.m., originating from my home IP address. Julian. While I was pretending to be unconscious downstairs, he had tried to access my work accounts. He was not just after my personal savings. He was trying to breach my firm's confidential client trust accounts. If he had succeeded, I would not just be broke. I would be disbarred and facing federal prison for embezzlement. He was trying to frame me. I called the IT director immediately. I told him I suspected my credentials had been compromised by a phishing scam and needed a hard reset on everything. I implemented two-factor authentication directly to the burner phone Mike gave me. Then I pulled up the internal logs. Julian was sloppy. He had tried to guess my password using variations of our anniversary and his birthday. The arrogance was breathtaking. He really thought my entire world revolved around him. I spent the next 4 hours working like a machine. I moved my liquid assets into offshore holding companies I had set up for clients years ago but never used. I changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance policies from Julian to my younger sister in grad school. I drafted a post-nuptial agreement that was so draconian it would make a judge blush just in case I needed a plan B. I was fortifying my castle while the enemy was already inside the gates. At 3:00 p.m., the burner phone in my purse buzzed. It was Mike. I answered on the first ring. "I hope you are sitting down." "Boss," Mike's voice was grim, deeper than usual. "Tell me," I said, staring out the window at the city skyline. "Julian is not just a failed day trader," Mike began. "He has been funneling money out of your joint account for 2 years, but he is not losing it in the market. He is washing it. He set up a shell company in Nevada under a fake name. And guess who the co-signer is?" "Ashley." I said the name, tasting like bile. "Bingo," Mike said. "But that is the small stuff. I ran Ashley. She did not just lose her license for bad paperwork. She was indicted for elder fraud 3 years ago in Florida. She finds vulnerable people, gains their trust, gets power of attorney, and drains them dry. She pleaded down to a misdemeanor and changed her last name, but the pattern fits. They are running a long con on you, Keisha. This was the plan from the day you met Julian. I felt the room spin, the courtship, the romance, the way he pursued me so relentlessly. It was all a job. I was not his wife. I was a mark. There is one more thing, Mike said, and his hesitation terrified me. I traced the wire transfers from their shell company. They are not paying off debts. They are stockpiling. They opened a joint account in the Cayman Islands 6 months ago. It is an offshore trust protected by layers of anonymity, but they got sloppy with the email verification. The account nickname is listed in the bank's internal memo line. What is it called, Mike? I asked, my grip on the phone tightening until the plastic creaked. It is listed as Project Widow, Mike said. No, wait, I am reading the subfile. The account name is Plan K for Keisha. They deposited $50,000 in it last week. Plan K. My murder had a budget. My institutionalization had a savings account. They were betting on my demise and banking the proceeds before I was even cold. Send me the files, Mike, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that sounded dangerous even to my own ears. Send me everything. I hung up the phone. I did not scream. I did not cry. A cold, hard clarity settled over me, turning my grief into a weapon. They wanted to play games with my life. They wanted to treat me like a foolish woman who could be charmed out of her fortune and her sanity. They had made a fatal error. They forgot that I took down billion-dollar corporations for a living. I looked at the family photo on my desk, the one taken at our wedding. I picked it up and dropped it into the metal wastebasket. Then I stood up and smoothed my skirt. It was time to go home. It was time to cook dinner. And it was time to show Julian and his accomplices exactly what happens when you corner the wrong woman. The drive home felt like navigating through a minefield where the explosives were invisible and the map had been drawn by a madman. I pulled into the driveway and stared at the house that I had bought with my bonus from the Henderson merger 3 years ago. It used to be my sanctuary, a place of peace, where I could shed the armor of a high-powered attorney and just be Keisha. Now it was a crime scene waiting to happen. The porch light was off, even though I had set the timer to dusk specifically to avoid coming home to darkness. It was a small thing, a petty thing, but it was the first brick in the wall Julian was building around my sanity. I took a deep breath, gripped my purse, which now contained the most dangerous evidence I had ever collected, and unlocked the front door. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt wrong. It was not a temperature change or a smell. It was spatial. I walked into the foyer and stopped. The antique mahogany console table that usually stood against the left wall was now on the right. The large mirror that hung above it had been lowered by 6 inches. To anyone else, it would look like redecorating. To me, it felt like vertigo. I blinked momentarily, doubting myself. Did I ask the cleaner to move it? Did I do it myself in a fog? No. I remembered placing my keys in the crystal bowl on the left side every day for 3 years. This was deliberate. This was the gaslighting Mike had warned me about. They wanted me to question my physical reality so I would not trust my own mind when they came for my money. Julian walked out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing a cashmere sweater I had bought him for Christmas, looking soft and harmless. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice laced with a concern that made my skin crawl. "You are late." I was getting worried. You know how you get when you drive at night lately? I stared at the table. "Why is the furniture moved, Julian?" He looked at the table, then at me with a perfect expression of confusion. "What do you mean moved? It has been there since last week, Keisha. You asked me to move it on Sunday." "Don't you remember?" I felt a spike of adrenaline. I did not ask him to move anything. Sunday we were at brunch with his parents. But I bit my tongue. If I argued, I was the crazy wife. If I accepted it, I was the compliant victim. I needed to be the latter to catch him. "Right," I said, forcing my shoulders to slump. "I must have forgotten." My head is pounding again. "See," Julian said, walking over to rub my shoulders. His touch felt like ice. "You are overworking yourself. You need to decompress." I made swordfish. I let him guide me to the kitchen. I ate the food he prepared, pushing it around my plate, taking tiny bites and hiding pieces in my napkin when he looked away. I was not going to be drugged tonight. After dinner, I went to grab my car keys from the bowl on the console table. I needed to move my car into the garage. The bowl was empty. Julian. "Where are my keys?" I asked. He was washing dishes, his back to me. "You put them in your purse, didn't you?" I checked my purse. It was empty. I checked my pockets. Nothing. I knew I had placed them in the bowl the second I walked in. I had heard the clink of metal on crystal. "They are not here," I said, letting a note of panic creep into my voice. "I know I put them in the bowl." Julian turned around, drying his hands. "Keisha, I watched you walk in. You didn't put anything in the bowl. You walked straight to the living room and threw your coat on the sofa. You probably left them in the car ignition again, like you did last Tuesday." I had never left my keys in the ignition in my life. But I played my part. I ran out to the car. The ignition was empty. I searched under the seats. Nothing. I came back inside breathing hard, performing the role of the frantic, unraveling woman. "They are gone, Julian," I said. "I lost them. I am losing everything." He sighed, a long, weary sound that suggested he was dealing with a toddler. "It is okay, Keisha. I have the spare set. We will look for them tomorrow. Just go sit down. I need to make a call." I sat on the sofa, the one that had been shifted 2 inches to the left, so that I kept bumping my knee against the coffee table. I watched Julian pick up his phone. He did not leave the room. He stood in the doorway, ensuring I could hear every word. "Hello, Dr. Stevens." "Yes, it is Julian Vance. I am sorry to call so late." "Yes, it is Keisha again. She is having another episode. She thinks someone is moving the furniture. She lost her keys and insisted they were stolen. Yes, she is very agitated. I am worried she might hurt herself." I reached into my cardigan pocket and silently slid the switch on my voice recorder to on. This was it. He was creating the paper trail for my commitment. He was manufacturing a medical history of instability. Dr. Stevens was likely not even a doctor, or if he was on Ashley's payroll. I kept my face buried in my hands, shoulders shaking as if I were sobbing. In reality, I was listening to every word, memorizing the cadence of his lies. "Okay," Dr. Julian said. "I will monitor her tonight. If she gets violent, I will call the paramedics as we discussed. Thank you." He hung up and walked over to me. He knelt down, putting his face close to mine. I could smell the expensive wine he had been drinking. My wine. "Dr. Stevens thinks you need serious rest, Keisha," he whispered. "He thinks you might need to go somewhere quiet for a few days, just to reset." I looked up at him, making my eyes wide and wet. I grabbed his hand, squeezing it with desperate strength. "Maybe he is right," I said, my voice trembling. "I feel like I am losing my mind, Julian. I don't remember asking you to move the table. I don't remember where I put the keys. I am so tired. I just want it to stop." Julian's eyes lit up. It was a flicker of triumph he couldn't hide. He thought I had broken. He thought the gaslighting had finally fractured my reality. "It is okay, baby," he cooed. "I'm going to take care of everything. I will handle the finances, the house, everything. You just need to sleep. Why don't you go upstairs and get ready for bed? I am going to take a shower, and then I will bring you some warm milk." Warm milk. Another delivery system for the poison. "Okay," I whispered. "You are so good to me, Julian. I don't deserve you." "No," he said, kissing my forehead. "You don't." I walked up the stairs, dragging my feet like a condemned woman. I went into the bedroom and changed into my pajamas. I brushed my teeth. I waited. 5 minutes later, I heard the shower turn on in the master bathroom. Julian liked long, hot showers. He would be in there for at least 20 minutes. The moment the water pressure stabilized, I moved. I did not go to bed. I went to his home office across the hall. I did not turn on the lights. I worked by the glow of the street lamps filtering through the blinds. I opened his laptop. It was password protected, of course. But I didn't need to get in. I just needed to get under. I pulled a small USB drive from my pocket. It was a hardware keylogger Mike had given me. It would record every keystroke he made, every password he typed, every email he drafted. I plugged it into the rear port of his desktop tower, hidden amongst the tangle of printer cables and Ethernet cords. Then I quickly installed a secondary software tracker on his laptop, bypassing his firewall with the administrator override code he had foolishly written on a sticky note under his keyboard tray 3 years ago. He thought I never paid attention to his tech setup. He forgot that I was the one who bought him the computer. The software loaded. A small green bar filled up the screen. 90%. 95. I heard the shower turn off. My heart slammed against my ribs. If he walked in now, the game was over. He would see the screen. He would see the drive. He would know I was not the fragile, broken wife he was molding. "Come on," I whispered. 100%. Installation complete. The program vanished into the background processes, invisible to anyone but an expert. I shut the laptop lid. I grabbed the sticky note and placed it back exactly as it was aligning the dust outline. I sprinted silently back to the bedroom and dove under the covers just as the bathroom door handle turned. Julian walked out in a towel, steam billowing behind him. He looked at the bed. I was curled in a fetal position, breathing deeply and evenly. He walked over to his nightstand and picked up his phone. I heard the tap of his fingers on the screen. "She is down," he whispered. "The doctor act worked. She is ready for the facility. Tell Darius to bring the van tomorrow night." He climbed into bed next to me. He turned off the lamp. He fell asleep within minutes, snoring softly, confident that he was sleeping next to his victim. I lay there in the dark, my eyes wide open. I stared at the ceiling fan cutting through the shadows. I did not sleep. I could not sleep. I was rewiring my fear into fuel. Tomorrow, the keylogger would give me his bank codes, his messages to Ashley, and the location of the Cayman account. Tomorrow, the hunter would become the prey. I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. Sweet dreams, husband. Enjoy them while they last. The vibration of the burner phone against my leg felt like a second heartbeat. It was Big Mike sending over the deep dive dossier on Ashley. I locked my office door and pulled up the encrypted file on my laptop. I thought I knew who I was dealing with. I thought Ashley was just a greedy, failed real estate agent who married the wrong brother. I was wrong. The PDF Mike compiled painted a picture of a woman who was not just a failure, but a malignant tumor of resentment. Ashley had been a beauty queen at a mid-tier state university in Alabama. She had been the golden girl, the one everyone expected to marry a senator or a CEO. But the records showed a different trajectory. She dropped out sophomore year. Academic probation. Then a string of retail jobs she was fired from for theft or attitude problems. Then she met Darius. The file showed she had pushed Darius into bad investments, trying to buy a lifestyle they could not afford. But the most telling part was the social media archive Mike had scraped. Years of posts, subtweet after subtweet targeting me. She hated me. It was not just about the money, it was visceral. She hated that I, a black woman from a working-class neighborhood in Chicago, had built a kingdom while she, the Southern belle, was drowning in debt. She hated my degrees. She hated my partnership at the firm. She hated that I did not need a man to buy my shoes. Every family dinner where she smiled and passed the peas, she was internally screaming at the injustice of my success. It was the deadliest kind of jealousy, because it felt entitled. She believed my life belonged to her by birthright. I needed to know how dangerous she really was. Mike had flagged a name in the file, Veronica Miller, a former business partner of Ashley's from her brief stint in real estate. I called the number. Veronica agreed to meet me at a diner on the outskirts of town. Veronica was a nervous woman who chain-smoked and kept looking at the door. When I showed her Ashley's picture, she flinched. "You are related to her?" Veronica asked, blowing smoke away from my face. "I am sorry for you." "She is my sister-in-law," I said. "I need to know why she lost her license. The board records just say administrative misconduct." "It was not administrative," Veronica said with a bitter laugh. It was theft. We had an elderly client, Mr. Henderson. He was selling his family home to move into assisted living. Ashley convinced him to sign a power of attorney so she could handle the closing costs while he was in the hospital. She drained his escrow account, $50,000. She spent it on a luxury vacation and a lease on a Range Rover. My stomach turned. It was the exact same playbook she was running on me. Why wasn't she prosecuted, I asked. Mr. Henderson died before the trial, Veronica said, and his family did not want the scandal. Ashley charmed the board into letting her surrender her license quietly. She is a chameleon. She plays the victim better than anyone I have ever met. She will look you in the eye and cry while she is picking your pocket. Watch your back. If she thinks you have something she deserves, she will not stop until she takes it or destroys it. I drove back to the city with my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Ashley was not just an accomplice. She was the architect. Julian was weak and greedy, but Ashley was the engine. She had found a new host to parasitize, and that host was my husband. I returned to my office around 2 in the afternoon. The floor was buzzing with activity. Associates were running files, phones were ringing. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on a merger contract, but my mind was replaying Veronica's words. Suddenly the hum of the office died down. A silence rippled through the bullpen outside my glass walls. I looked up. Ashley was standing in the doorway of my office. She did not look like the disheveled woman in my kitchen this morning. She was wearing a white suit that looked suspiciously like a knockoff of one I owned. Her hair was blown out perfectly. She was holding a large, gaudy gift basket wrapped in cellophane. "Keisha, honey," she boomed, her voice projecting to the back of the room. I stood up slowly. Every eye on the floor was on us. My colleagues, my paralegals, the junior partners. They were all watching. "What are you doing here, Ashley?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "I just had to come check on you," she said, walking in and placing the basket on my desk. It clattered loudly. "Julian told me about the episode this morning. We are so worried about you." She turned slightly, making sure her voice carried to the open door. "I brought you some herbal teas and those calming supplements Dr. Stevens recommended. I know the addiction is hard to fight, sweetie, but we are here for you. You do not have to hide the pills anymore." The air left the room. She was doing it. She was planting the seed of my instability in my professional world. She was branding me an addict in front of the people who held my career in their hands. If I screamed, I looked crazy. If I kicked her out, I looked defensive. I looked at her. I saw the gleam of triumph in her blue eyes. She thought she had me cornered. She thought I would crumble under the social pressure. I walked around my desk. I stood toe-to-toe with her. I smiled. It was the smile I used when opposing counsel made a fatal objection. "That is so thoughtful of you, Ashley," I said, my voice clear and projecting, just as well as hers. "It is funny you mention pills. I was just looking at the toxicology report from this morning. It seems the only things in my system are vitamins and the caffeine from the coffee you drank out of my mug this morning." Ashley's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Oh, honey, you are confused again," she said, reaching for my arm. "That is the paranoia talking." I sidestepped her touch. And speaking of confusion, I continued, not breaking eye contact. "I spoke to Veronica Miller today. She sends her regards. She said to ask you if you ever paid back the $50,000 from the Henderson escrow account." Ashley went pale. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint for real. The office was dead silent. The junior associates were pretending to type, but they were listening to every word. "I do not know what you are talking about," Ashley hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I think you do," I said, leaning in close so only she could hear. "I know about Florida, I know about the license, and I know about the account in the Caymans. Get out of my office. If you ever show your face in this building again, I will have security drag you out and I will fax your mugshot to every news outlet in the city." Ashley grabbed her purse. Her hands were shaking. She looked around the room, realizing the audience had turned. She had come to perform a tragedy, and I had turned it into a court-martial. "You are sick," she spat, backing out of the door. "You need help." I watched her walk rapidly to the elevators, her heels clicking a frantic rhythm. I did not sit down until the elevator doors closed. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I had drawn first blood. I picked up the gift basket and dropped it into the trash can. I did not even check what was in it. My computer pinged with a high-priority alert. It was not a work email. It was a notification from the private bank where my family trust was held. The trust my mother had left me. The one Julian knew about but could never access because it required a physical signature verification at the branch. Attempted withdrawal, $250, $1,000. Location downtown branch. Status flagged for review. Signature mismatch. I opened the alert details. Someone had walked into the bank 10 minutes ago and tried to initiate a wire transfer using a power of attorney document. The bank manager, who had known my mother for 20 years, had flagged it because the signature on the power of attorney looked traced. I pulled up the security camera feed from the bank lobby that was attached to the incident report. It was a grainy still image, but I recognized the jacket. It was a man in a hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses. It wasn't Julian. Julian was too vain to wear a hoodie. It was Darius. They were accelerating. They had moved from the long con to the smash and grab. Ashley's visit was a distraction. She came here to keep me occupied while Darius tried to raid the vault. They were desperate. The sharks in Vegas must have given them a deadline. I picked up my burner phone and texted Big Mike. They tried the trust fund. Darius is the runner. Get a team on him. I want to know where he goes, who he talks to, and what he eats for dinner. Then I called the bank manager. "Mr. Henderson," I said, "this is Keisha Vance. Do not decline the transaction yet. Tell him there is a 24-hour hold for verification. Let him think it went through." "Keisha, are you sure?" the manager asked. "That is $250,000. "I am sure," I said. "I want them to think they won. I want them to feel the money in their hands, because when I snatch it away, I want it to hurt." I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at the city below. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the skyscrapers. The game had changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about total annihilation. I grabbed my briefcase. It was time to go home and play the loving, medicated wife one last time. The heavy thud of a thick manila folder hitting the granite kitchen island sounded like a gavel striking a judge's bench. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. The house was quiet, disturbingly so, after the chaos of the day. Julian had been pacing the living room for the last hour, checking his watch every 3 minutes. His eyes darting to the window as if he expected the repo men or the sharks from Vegas to burst through the glass. He had cooked dinner, a simple pasta dish that I had pushed around my plate for 20 minutes before dumping it into the disposal when he went to the bathroom. I was not taking any chances. Now he stood over me, his silhouette blocking out the recessed lighting, casting a long shadow over the kitchen. He was not the charming man I married. He was a cornered animal wearing a Brooks Brothers suit. "I need you to sign these," Julian said. His voice was tight-strained, trying to mimic casual concern but failing miserably. It sounded like a demand wrapped in a whisper. I looked at the folder. It was thick blue and legal size. I knew exactly what kind of documents came in folders like that. I used them every day to strip companies of their assets or protect billionaires from their mistakes. "What is it, Julian?" I asked, keeping my voice small and trembling. "I am so tired. Can't this wait until morning?" "No," he said, sliding the folder closer to me. "It cannot wait. It is just some updated insurance paperwork, Keisha, with everything going on with your episodes. I wanted to make sure we were fully covered. The policy lapses at midnight. If you do not sign now, we lose the coverage." I reached out a shaking hand and opened the cover. The top page was a standard beneficiary update form. But underneath, peeking out just a fraction of an inch, was the real weapon. I saw the bold header, Durable Power of Attorney. And below that, General Assignment of Assets. He wasn't just trying to get access to an account, he was trying to become me. With these documents, he could sell the house, liquidate my retirement, empty the offshore accounts, and sign medical directives to have me committed indefinitely. He was trying to legally erase my existence. I don't understand. I whimpered, flipping the page feebly so I could see the signature line. This looks like a lot of legal jargon, Julian. I should read it first. You are a lawyer, Keisha, he snapped, then caught himself. He took a deep breath and walked around the island. He stood right behind my chair. He placed his hands on my shoulders. His grip was hard, his thumbs digging into my trapezius muscles painfully. This was soft violence. It was physical domination masquerading as a massage. He leaned down, his breath hot against my ear. It smelled of stale coffee and fear. Baby, look at you, he cooed. You can barely keep your eyes open. You are in no condition to read fine print. You trust me, don't you? I am your husband. I am doing this for you, for us. Just sign the papers so I can take this burden off your shoulders. I felt the heat of his body pressing against my back. It was suffocating. He was using his size, his presence to intimidate me into submission. He thought I was weak. He thought the drugs, the ones I hadn't taken, had turned my brain to mush. He didn't know that my mind was sharper than a scalpel. I need to sign this. If I refused, he might escalate. He might use the syringe I saw earlier. Or he might just beat me until I complied. I needed to give him what he wanted, but in a way that would destroy him. Okay, I whispered, tears leaking from my eyes. I trust you, Julian. I just want to sleep. Good girl, he said. He pulled a pen from his pocket. It was my Mont Blanc pen, the one I used to sign the closing documents on my first $1 million deal. He clicked it open and pressed it into my hand. Sign right there, and an initial the bottom. My hand hovered over the paper. I let it tremble violently. The tip of the pen tapped against the paper, leaving erratic ink dots. I can't! My hand is shaking too much, I sobbed. He grabbed my wrist. His fingers were like iron bands. He forced my hand down to the paper. Just do it, Keisha, he hissed. His mask slipped completely. His voice was guttural, ugly. Sign the damn paper. I signed. But I did not use my signature. 3 years ago, when my net worth crossed a certain threshold, my private banker and I established a distress protocol. We agreed that if any document ever came through with my signature, but the loop on the K was flat instead of round, and the cross on the T was angled down instead of up, it meant I was under duress. It meant, freeze everything, call the police. I let the pen drag across the page. I flattened the K. I angled the T sharply downward like a falling knife. To the untrained eye, it looked like a sloppy, medicated version of my normal signature. To the fraud department at Chase Private Client, it was a silent scream for help. There, I gasped, dropping the pen as if it weighed 50 pounds. Is that okay? Julian snatched the papers away. He scanned the signatures quickly. He saw the name Keisha Vance. That was all he cared about. He didn't see the code. He didn't see the trap. Perfect, he breathed. He closed the folder and clutched it to his chest. His eyes were wide, manic. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. You did good, babe. You did really good. Now you can rest. He helped me up from the chair. His touch was lighter now, almost dismissive. I was no longer an obstacle. I was just a loose end to be tied up later. Go upstairs, he said. I have some work to do in the office. I will check on you later. I walked to the stairs, leaning on the banister for support, keeping up the charade until I was out of his sightline. I dragged myself into the bedroom and closed the door loud enough for him to hear. Then I waited. I counted to 60. I took off my shoes. I opened the closet door and retrieved my laptop from beneath a pile of winter sweaters where I had hidden it that morning. I sat on the floor of the closet, surrounded by the smell of cedar and wool. I opened the laptop and pulled up the remote access program linked to the keylogger I had installed on his computer. Downstairs, I heard Julian enter his office. I heard the distinct sound of a bottle being uncorked. He was celebrating. On my screen, lines of text began to appear. He was typing. Login. J Vance 888 password. Redacted. Application iMessage. He was messaging Ashley. Of course. She was the architect. She was waiting for the green light. I watched the letters appear on my screen in real time, glowing green against the black background. Julian Dunn. I have the POA, signed and dated. A pause. Then Ashley's reply popped up. Ashley. Did she fight Julian a little? She was crying. Pathetic. She is completely broken, Ash. She thanked me for taking care of her. My blood ran cold. Pathetic. Broken. That is what he thought of me. That is what he saw when he looked at his wife of 5 years. Not a partner. A prey animal. Ashley Good. The buyer for the brownstone is ready to wire the deposit tomorrow morning. As soon as the bank opens, fax that POA to the trust officer. We need to move the liquidity before noon. Julian. What about her, Ashley? Stick to the schedule. Darius is bringing the van at 5 a.m. We take her to the facility in the mountains. Dr. Stevens says once she is admitted, we can keep her sedated for at least 30 days. That is enough time to liquidate everything and disappear. Julian. It feels too easy. Ashley. It is easy, baby. The fish has taken the bait. Phase 2 starts now. Get some sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. Julian. Love you. Ashley, love you too. We are going to be rich. I closed the laptop. The glow of the screen faded, leaving me in the dark. The fish has taken the bait. They thought I was the fish. They thought I was thrashing on the hook, gasping for air. They didn't realize that I wasn't the fish. I was the riptide. And I was about to pull them all under. I checked the time. It was 10:45 p.m. Darius was coming at 5:00 a.m. That gave me 6 hours. 6 hours to turn this house from a crime scene into a courtroom. 6 hours to prepare the final act. I stood up. My legs were not shaking anymore. My head was clear. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp precision. I was done pretending to be weak. I was done pretending to be tired. I picked up my burner phone. I sent a single text message to Big Mike. Code red. They are moving at 0500. Bring the cavalry. Then I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. Not to bathe, but to mask the sound of me dragging my heavy travel trunk out of storage. I wasn't packing clothes, I was packing evidence. And I had a long night ahead of me. The living room of my own house felt like a courtroom where the jury had already been bribed and the verdict was written before the trial began. Julian had insisted on throwing me an early birthday party. He called it a celebration of life, but I knew it was a gathering of witnesses. He needed an audience to see his wife unravel. He needed credible testimony from his family that I was unstable, erratic, and unfit to manage my own affairs. The guests were exclusively his side of the family. His mother Loretta sat in my favorite armchair looking at me with the same expression one might reserve for a stain on a silk rug. His cousins clustered by the buffet, whispering behind their hands. And of course, Darius and Ashley were holding court in the center of the room, acting like the hosts of a party they had not paid for. I sat on the sofa, my hands folded in my lap, playing the role they had written for me. I wore a pale dress and little makeup, making sure to look wan and exhausted. Julian hovered over me, playing the devoted husband. He offered me hors d'oeuvres I did not eat and water I did not drink. Every time I refused, he would sigh loudly enough for his mother to hear and give her a look that said, "See what I have to deal with." "We have a gift for you," Keisha Ashley announced suddenly. Her voice cut through the low murmur of conversation like a serrated knife. She walked over to the center of the room holding a gift bag. It was bright yellow and cheerful, which was a stark contrast to the malice in her eyes. I just know you are going to love it. It has helped me so much during my own difficult times." The room went silent. Everyone watched as Ashley handed me the bag. I reached inside and pulled out a thick hardcover book. The title was printed in bold, soothing letters. "Finding Your Way Back, A Guide to Healing from Severe Mental Illness." A gasp rippled through the room. It was performative, of course. They all knew. They were all in on the joke. I just thought it might help, Ashley said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "With everything you have been going through lately with the memory loss and the episodes, we just want you to get better, sweetie. We want the old Keisha back." I held the book. It was heavy. I imagined slamming it into her face, but I kept my expression blank. I looked down at my hands and let a single tear slide down my cheek. I had practiced crying on command in the mirror that morning. "Thank you, Ashley," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I am trying, I really am." Julian squeezed my shoulder. His grip was too tight. "See, everyone," he said, addressing the room. "She acknowledges she needs help. That is the first step. We are all here for you, baby." His mother, Loretta, stood up. She walked over, leaning on her cane. She did not look at me with kindness. She looked at me with judgment. "You have a good man here," Keisha, Loretta said. Her voice was gravelly and stern. "He works so hard to take care of you. And what do? You fall apart. You neglect your duties as a wife. A woman's job is to build her home, not destroy it with her hysteria. If you cannot handle your job, maybe you should quit. Let Julian handle the finances. He is the man of the house after all." The misogyny was breathtaking, but I nodded meekly. "You are right, Mom," I said. "I have been such a burden." Julian beamed. He thought he had won. He thought I was broken. "Let's have a toast," Julian said. "To Keisha's recovery. And to family stepping in when things get hard." He went to the bar cart. I watched him closely. His back was to the room, but I saw his reflection in the window glass. He poured champagne for everyone. But for my glass, he reached into his pocket first. A quick flick of the wrist. A pinch of white powder dropped into the flute. He swirled it gently until the powder dissolved into the bubbles. It was a massive dose. He wanted me unconscious before the cake was cut. He walked over to me, smiling. He handed me the glass. "For you, my love," he said. I took the glass. My hand shook intentionally, causing the liquid to slosh dangerously close to the rim. "Thank you, Julian," I said. Darius walked over holding his own glass. He was already drunk. His tie was loose, and he smelled of bourbon and greed. He stood next to me, looming over the sofa. "Drink up, Keisha," Darius slurred. "It will make you feel better." I looked at the glass. I looked at Darius. I needed a distraction. "Oh my God," I gasped, looking toward the kitchen. "Is that smoke?" Everyone turned. For a split second, all eyes were on the kitchen doorway. In that second, I moved with the speed of a striking cobra. I switched my glass with the one Darius was holding loosely in his left hand. The glasses were identical crystal flutes from our wedding set. "False alarm," I said, sinking back into the sofa. "I am sorry. I am just so jumpy." Julian sighed. "See," he said to his mother. "She is hallucinating fires now. It is getting worse." "It is okay, baby," Julian said to me. "Just drink your champagne. It will calm your nerves." I raised the glass to my lips. I pretended to sip, but kept my lips sealed tight. Darius, however, did not hesitate. He drained his glass in one long gulp. "That is good stuff," Julian, Darius said, wiping his mouth. "Top shelf." We sat there for 10 minutes. Ashley was telling a story about her charity work, which I knew was court-ordered community service. Julian was watching me, waiting for my eyes to roll back. But my eyes stayed open. Darius, however, started to sway. He was standing by the fireplace, leaning against the mantel. He blinked rapidly. He shook his head as if trying to clear water from his ears. "Whoa," Darius said. His words were thick and heavy. "The room is spinning." Julian frowned. You barely had 2 drinks, Darius. Sit down. Darius tried to step forward, but his legs turned to rubber. He crumpled. It was not a graceful faint. It was a dead weight collapse. He hit the coffee table on the way down, smashing a tray of appetizers before landing face first on the Persian rug. Darius Ashley screamed, dropping her plate. The room erupted into chaos. Julian rushed to his brother. He rolled him over. Darius was breathing, but his breathing was shallow and ragged. His eyes were open but unseeing, the pupils blown wide. "What is wrong with him?" Loretta yelled, banging her cane on the floor. "He is having a heart attack. Call 911. "No," Julian shouted. "No police. No ambulance." He looked at me. His face was a mask of pure terror. He looked at the glass on the table, the one Darius had dropped. Then he looked at the glass in my hand, the one I was still holding. "You," Julian whispered. I looked back at him. I did not look confused. I did not look medicated. I looked him dead in the eye and I smiled. "He drank my toast, Julian," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the noise. "I guess he really wanted to celebrate my recovery." Julian checked Darius's pulse. It was thready. He knew exactly what was in that glass. He knew it was enough rohypnol and tranquilizers to knock out a person for 20 hours. But mixed with the alcohol Darius had already consumed, it was a lethal cocktail. "We have to take him to the hospital," Ashley screamed. "He is turning blue, Julian." Julian was paralyzed. If he took him to the hospital, they would run a tox screen. They would find the drugs. They would ask questions. If he didn't take him, Darius might die right there on my rug. I stood up. I smoothed my dress. "You should probably hurry," I said. "He looks like he is struggling to breathe." Julian looked at me with hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "You did this," he hissed. "I did nothing," I said. "I just watched you poison your own brother." Loretta was wailing. Ashley was slapping Darius's face, trying to wake him up. The cousins were filming on their phones. I walked to the kitchen and poured my champagne down the sink. Then I grabbed my purse. "Where are you going?" Julian demanded, standing up. "I am going to bed," I said. "I have a big day tomorrow, and you have a mess to clean up." I walked up the stairs, leaving them in the chaos they had created. I heard Julian cursing. I heard them dragging Darius out the front door. They wouldn't call an ambulance to the house. They would drive him and dump him at the ER entrance and make up a story about him taking pills at a party. They were cowards. I went into my bedroom and locked the door. I checked the monitor. They were gone. The house was quiet again. But the war was far from over. Julian would be back, and he would be desperate. Desperate men made mistakes, and I would be waiting to catch every single one of them. I pulled the chair under the doorknob just in case. Tonight, I would sleep. Tomorrow, I would drop the hammer. The silence that descended on the house was heavy and suffocating, like the air before a tornado touches down. I stood with my back pressed against my bedroom door, listening to the sound of tires screeching away on the asphalt outside. I assumed they had all gone to the hospital, rushing Darius to the emergency room to pump my cocktail out of his stomach. I moved to the window and peeked through the blinds. I saw the taillights of Darius's SUV fading down the street, but Julian's sedan was still in the driveway, and Ashley's convertible was parked right behind it. They hadn't left. They had sent Loretta and the cousins to deal with the medical emergency while they stayed behind to sanitize the crime scene. I moved quickly to my desk and woke up my laptop. I pulled up the hidden camera interface. The feed from the living room flickered to life in high definition. The room was a wreck. The shattered champagne flute lay on the Persian rug like a jagged accusation. The appetizer tray was overturned, crackers and cheese trampled into the wool. Julian was there. He was on his knees, frantically scrubbing at the wine stain on the rug with a cloth napkin. He wasn't worried about the rug. He was worried about forensic evidence. He was trying to erase the traces of the poison before anyone asked why Darius dropped like a stone. Ashley was standing over him. She wasn't helping. She was pacing her heels, clicking a nervous rhythm on the hardwood. She looked erratic, her hands fluttering to her hair, her face pale. "You used too much," Ashley hissed. The microphone I had installed in the smoke detector picked up her voice with crystal clarity. "You said it was a mild sedative, Julian. He looked like he was dying. If he dies, we are looking at manslaughter charges." "He is not going to die," Julian snapped, throwing the stained napkin onto the coffee table. "He is just sleeping it off. Darius has the constitution of an ox. He will wake up with a headache and no memory of tonight. The real problem is her." He pointed a finger toward the ceiling toward my bedroom. "She knows," Ashley, Julian said, standing up and running a hand over his face. "Did you see her eyes?" She switched the glasses. She knew exactly what I was doing. "The gaslighting isn't working anymore. She is lucid. She is dangerous." I watched the screen, mesmerized by their panic. They were turning on each other. The pressure was cracking their alliance. I expected Ashley to snap back to berate him for his incompetence, but what happened next made the air leave my lungs. Ashley stopped pacing. Her face softened. She walked over to Julian and placed her hands on his chest. It wasn't a comforting gesture between in-laws. It was intimate, possessive. She ran her hands up his lapels and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Baby, calm down," she cooed. Her voice dropped an octave, becoming sultry and soothing. "We are going to fix this. We just have to accelerate the timeline." Julian slumped against her, burying his face in her neck. He held her tight, his hands roaming down her back to rest on her hips. "My husband." Embracing his brother's wife in the middle of our living room, while his brother lay unconscious in the back of a car. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to cover my mouth to keep from retching. This was not just about money. It never was. The betrayal was absolute. They weren't just stealing my assets. They were stealing my life while mocking the sanctity of the family they claimed to uphold. "We have to get rid of her," Julian, Ashley whispered, pulling back just enough to look him in the eyes. "Not just the institution. We need her gone for good." Darius is starting to ask questions. He found the second phone last week. He knows I am talking to someone, he just does not know it is you. If he finds out about us before we get the money, he will kill us both. You know how he gets. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Darius didn't know. The brother who had plotted with them, who had helped terrorize me, was just another mark. He was the muscle, the useful idiot they were stringing along until they could run off into the sunset with my millions. This changed everything. Darius was a monster, yes, but he was a monster with a code. He valued loyalty above all else. If he knew his own brother was sleeping with his wife, his rage would not be directed at me. It would be directed at them. "We can't kill her," Julian groaned, pulling away slightly. "Too messy. Too many questions. The plan was clean. The conservatorship gives us control without the murder investigation." "The plan is dead," Ashley shouted, her voice rising again. "She knows she is going to go to the police, or worse, she is going to go to the partners at her firm. We need to move her tonight. Forget the van in the morning. We do it now. We drug her, put her in my car, and drive her to the facility ourselves. We tell them she had a violent episode and we had to transport her for her own safety." Julian looked at the stairs. He looked terrified. "She locked the door, Ash. She said she has a big day tomorrow." "What if she called someone? Who would she call?" Ashley scoffed. "She has no family. We made sure of that. She has no friends because you isolated her. She is alone, Julian. Just kick the door down and stick her with the needle. Do it for us. Do it so we can finally be together without hiding in cheap motels or waiting for Darius to pass out." Julian looked at her. I saw the resolve harden in his eyes. He wasn't doing this for the debt anymore. He was doing it for her. He was doing it for the twisted future they had imagined together on my dime. "Okay," Julian said. He grabbed the syringe from his pocket, the one I had seen earlier. "Okay, I will go up there. You get the car ready. Pull it into the garage so the neighbors don't see us carrying her out." He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that lasted for 10 agonizing seconds. I watched my husband kiss my sister-in-law in the home I bought plotting my abduction. I hit the record button on the software interface. I saved the clip. Then I saved it again to the cloud. Then I emailed it to Big Mike. This was it. This was the nuclear option. The money laundering, the poisoning, the fraud that would send them to prison. But this video. This would destroy them from the inside out. This would turn their strongest ally into their executioner. Darius was a violent man with a short temper. When he saw this, he wouldn't call a lawyer. He would come for blood. I watched Julian pull away from Ashley. He took a deep breath, checked the syringe, and started walking toward the stairs. Ashley grabbed her keys and headed for the garage door. They were coming. I closed the laptop. I stood up. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, dark amusement. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was the prey in the attic waiting to be devoured. They didn't know that I had just been handed the remote detonator to their entire lives. I picked up the heavy brass statue from my dresser. It was an award I had won for legal excellence. It weighed about 5 pounds. I walked to the bedroom door and unlocked it. I removed the chair I had wedged under the handle. I turned off the lights and stood in the shadows behind the doorframe. "Come on, Julian," I whispered into the darkness. "Come and get me." I heard his footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate. The floorboards creaked outside my room. I gripped the statue. I wasn't going to wait for him to kick the door down. I wasn't going to be the victim in the back of a van. The doorknob turned slowly. The door creaked open. A beam of light from the hallway cut across the floor. Julian stepped into the room, the syringe raised in his right hand. "Keisha," he whispered. I did not answer. I swung. But I didn't swing at him. I swung the statue against the wall, smashing the light switch and plunging the room into total darkness. While he was disoriented, blinded by the sudden change in light, I slipped past him into the hallway. I didn't need to fight him physically. I just needed to get to the garage before Ashley realized I wasn't unconscious. I sprinted down the stairs. I heard Julian shout behind me, a roar of confusion and rage. I hit the landing and turned toward the kitchen. The door to the garage was open. I could hear the engine of Ashley's luxury SUV idling. I ran into the garage. Ashley was in the driver's seat, adjusting the rearview mirror, checking her lipstick. She didn't see me until I was right at the window. I tapped on the glass with the brass statue. She screamed and jumped, looking at me with eyes wide with horror. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't bound. I was standing there in my evening gown, holding a heavy, blunt object, looking like a nightmare she had summoned. I smiled at her, a wolfish smile. And then I turned and ran out the side door into the night, disappearing into the hedges, just as Julian burst into the garage. I wasn't running away. I was running to my car parked down the street where I had left it hours ago. I had the video. I had the evidence. And now I was going to pay a visit to Darius in the hospital. It was time for a family reunion. The doorbell rang at 3 in the morning. It was not a polite chime. It was a long, aggressive buzz that echoed through the silent house like a fire alarm. I lay in bed, my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan. Beside me, Julian jolted awake. He was sweating before he even sat up. He knew who it was. He had been checking his phone every 5 minutes for the past 2 days, terrified of a number he had saved as accountant. I feigned sleep, breathing deeply and evenly while he scrambled out of bed and crept downstairs. I waited 10 seconds, then pulled my phone from under my pillow and opened the security app. The camera on the front porch showed a black sedan idling at the curb with its lights off. A small cardboard box sat on the welcome mat. Julian opened the door just a crack. He looked left and right, like a man expecting a sniper. He snatched the box and slammed the door. I switched the feed to the kitchen camera. Julian threw the box onto the island and tore it open with trembling hands. He screamed. It was a strangled, high-pitched sound that died in his throat. He backed away until he hit the refrigerator, sliding down to the floor. I zoomed in on the box. Nestled in a bed of red tissue paper was a finger. It looked severed. It looked bloody. And next to it was a note written in thick black marker. 48 hours, 500 grand. Or we take the whole hand. Julian was hyperventilating. He clawed at his chest, gasping for air. He grabbed his phone and dialed. I knew who he was calling. Ashley picked up on the first ring. They found me. Ash. Julian sobbed into the receiver. They sent a finger. A human finger. They are going to kill me. Calm down. Ashley's voice filtered through the microphone, tiny and tinny. It is a prop, Julian. It is silicone. They are scaring you. It looks real, he wailed. They gave me 48 hours. We don't have 48 hours. The conservatorship hearing isn't until next week. We can't wait for the judge. We can't wait for the banks. I am dead, Ash. I am a dead man. There was a silence on the line. I watched Julian rocking back and forth on my kitchen tiles, a pathetic figure in expensive silk pajamas bought with my money. Then Ashley spoke, and her voice was ice cold. We accelerate, she said. Forget the courts. Forget the legal route. We do it the hard way. What do you mean? Julian asked, wiping his nose on his sleeve. We take her, Ashley said. Tonight. Well, tomorrow morning. There is a facility in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Quiet Hills. I know the director. I did a deal for him off the books a few years ago. He owes me. If we bring her there with a large cash entry fee, he will admit her, no questions asked. He will keep her sedated. He will keep her off the grid. That is kidnapping, Ash. Julian whispered. That is a felony. It is an intervention, Ashley corrected him smoothly. She is a danger to herself. We are protecting her. Once she is in there, we use the power of attorney to liquidate the assets immediately. We wire the money to the sharks. We pay off your debt, and we disappear before anyone realizes she is gone. By the time she wakes up and convinces anyone she is sane, we will be in Brazil. Julian looked at the box on the counter. He looked at the fake finger. He looked at the clock. Desperation hardened his features. The fear evaporated, replaced by a terrifying resolve. Okay, he said. Okay, let's do it. When? 5 a.m., Ashley said. That is shift change for the neighborhood security patrol. The street will be empty. I will borrow Darius's van. It has tinted windows. What about her? Julian asked. She has been fighting the pills. She was lucid at the party. Not this time, Ashley said. Triple the dose, Julian. Crush it into her water. Inject it if you have to. I want her comatose. If she makes a sound, if she struggles, we are finished. Do you understand? She needs to be dead weight. I understand, Julian said. 5 a.m. Triple dose. He hung up. He stood up and walked to the sink. He splashed water on his face. Then he walked to the medicine cabinet. I watched on the screen as he took the bottle of sedatives. He poured a handful of pills onto the counter. He took a heavy stone mortar and pestle from the shelf and began to grind them into a fine white powder. The rhythmic grinding sound echoed through the house. It was the sound of my husband preparing to erase me. I closed the app. My heart was beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my mind was crystal clear. This was it. The endgame. They were abandoning the pretense of legality. They were crossing the line from fraud to violent crime. If I ran now, I would be safe. I could go to the police. I could get a restraining order. But Julian would flee. Ashley would disappear. They would scatter like cockroaches in the light, and I would spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when they would come back for what they felt they were owed. No, running was not an option. I needed them caught in the act. I needed them to put their hands on me. I needed them to load me into that van. I needed indisputable proof of kidnapping, so that when the gavel came down, it would bury them forever. I picked up my burner phone. I dialed Big Mike. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep but alert. Report, he grumbled. It is going down, I said. They are moving me at 0500. They are taking me to a black market rehab in the mountains. Ashley is driving Darius's van. I am on my way, Mike said immediately. I will pull the team together. We will intercept them before they get you out the door. No, I said. There was a pause. What do you mean, no? If you stop them at the door, they will say it was a medical emergency, I explained. They will say they were taking me to the hospital. They have Dr. Stevens' fake evaluation. They have the power of attorney I signed. It becomes a he said, she said. I need them to transport me. I need them to cross state lines if possible, but at least get me into that van and drive. I need kidnapping charges, Mike. Not attempted kidnapping. Keisha, that is insane, Mike growled. You are talking about letting them drug you. You heard them. Triple dose. That could kill you. I am not taking the drugs, Mike, I said. I will fake it. I have done it before. And what if he uses the needle, Mike asked. What if he forces it? He won't, I said. He is a coward. He hates the sight of blood. He will try to make me drink it. I will handle Julian. I need you to be the shadow. I need you to follow that van. And when we hit the highway, I need you to box them in. I want the police. I want the FBI. I want the flashing lights and the news helicopters. I want the world to see Julian Vance dragging his unconscious wife out of a van like a sack of potatoes. It is too risky, Mike said. It is the only way, I insisted. I am not living my life in fear, Mike. I am ending this tonight. Are you with me, or do I need to call the cops myself? Mike sighed a heavy, resigned sound. I am with you, he said. I will have a tail on the house in 20 minutes. I will be in the lead car. I am putting a tracker on your burner phone right now. Keep it on you. Do not let them find it. I will tape it to my inner thigh, I said. Keisha, Mike said, his voice softening. If this goes south, if I lose eyes on you for 1 second. You won't, I said. You are the best. That is why I hired you. I hung up. I went to the bathroom. I found a roll of medical tape in the first aid kit. I taped the thin burner phone to the inside of my thigh, high up where a pat-down wouldn't find it. I put on a pair of loose sweatpants and a t-shirt. I crawled back into bed. 10 minutes later, the bedroom door opened. Julian walked in. He was carrying a glass of water. The water was cloudy. Keisha, he whispered. Wake up, baby. You need to hydrate. You look so pale. I stirred, pretending to wake from a deep sleep. I blinked groggily. Julian, I mumbled. What time is it? It is early, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Here, drink this. It has your vitamins in it. It will help you sleep through the night. I sat up. I took the glass. I looked at him. His eyes were desperate, pleading. He needed me to drink this. His life depended on it. Thank you, I said. You take such good care of me. I raised the glass to my lips. I took a mouthful. I held it in my cheeks. I pretended to swallow, making a gulping sound. Good girl, he said. Drink it all. I took another sip. And another, each time holding the bitter liquid in my mouth without swallowing a drop. When the glass was empty, I handed it back to him. I need to use the bathroom, I said. Okay, he said. Be quick. The medicine kicks in fast. I walked to the bathroom. I locked the door. I spat the liquid into the sink and washed it down with tap water. I rinsed my mouth out 3 times. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back was terrified, but she was also ready. I walked back into the bedroom. I climbed into bed. I love you, Julian, I mumbled, letting my eyelids droop. I know, he said, turning off the lamp. I know. I lay in the dark waiting for the morning, waiting for the van, waiting for the end of my marriage and the beginning of my life. I closed my eyes and regulated my breathing. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the jaws to snap shut. The blue light of my laptop screen was the only illumination in the study as the clock ticked past 2 in the morning. The house was silent, but it was the silence of a held breath before a scream. I sat in the leather chair that I had bought to celebrate my first year as a senior associate, and I systematically dismantled my financial existence. My fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating wire transfers that would drain every liquid asset I possessed from the accounts Julian could access. I was not just moving money, I was moving my life blood. I transferred the contents of my high-yield savings into a blind trust in the Cook Islands. I liquidated my stock portfolio and funneled the cash into a holding company registered in Delaware that Julian did not know existed. I watched the balances drop to zero one by one. It gave me a grim satisfaction to know that when he tried to access these funds tomorrow, he would find nothing but digital dust. He thought he was smart. He thought he understood the way money moved because he played at being a day trader. But he was an amateur playing a game against a grandmaster. I knew the banking regulations better than I knew my own family history. I knew exactly how to structure a transfer so that it would clear immediately but remain untraceable for 48 hours. By the time he realized the money was gone, it would be buried under layers of legal protections so thick he would need a diamond drill to get through them. I left exactly $100 in the joint checking account, just enough to pay for his cab ride to jail. Once the money was safe, I opened a new email window. This was the hardest part. I typed the address of the managing partner at my law firm. He was a man I respected, a man who had mentored me for a decade. Sending this email was a professional suicide note if I survived, but it was my insurance policy if I did not. Subject line: Emergency Protocol, Keisha Vance. I attached the toxicology report. I attached the video of Julian and Ashley kissing in my living room. I attached the audio recording of them plotting my commitment. I attached the logs from the keylogger showing their communications with the Cayman Bank. I typed a brief message. If you are reading this, I have been abducted or incapacitated by my husband, Julian Vance, and his sister-in-law, Ashley Vance. The attachments contain evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder by poisoning, and grand larceny. Please contact the district attorney immediately. This is not a drill. I set the email to send automatically at noon tomorrow. If I was free, I would cancel it. If I was in the back of a van or sedated in a mountain facility, the email would go out, and the entire legal weight of my firm would come crashing down on their heads. It was a dead man's switch. It was the only way I could guarantee that even if they silenced me, they would not win. I closed the laptop and wiped it down with a microfiber cloth, removing my fingerprints even though I knew it didn't matter. I stood up and walked out of the office. The hallway was shadowed and long. I walked through the house I had worked so hard to buy. I trailed my hand along the walls. I remembered the day we moved in. Julian had carried me over the threshold. He had promised to fill this house with love and laughter. It was all a lie. Every smile, every kiss, every shared meal was just part of the long con. He had never seen a home. He had only seen an asset to be liquidated. I stopped at the bathroom door. I went inside and locked it. I turned on the exhaust fan to mask any sound. I reached into the pocket of my robe and pulled out a small photograph. It was a Polaroid from our honeymoon in St. Lucia. We were sunburned and smiling, holding cocktails on a white sand beach. We looked happy. I looked happy. I stared at the woman in the photo, and I pitied her. She had no idea that the man with his arm around her waist was already calculating how much she was worth, dead or insane. I took a silver lighter from the vanity drawer. I held the flame to the corner of the photograph. The glossy paper curled and blackened. The fire ate through our smiling faces. It consumed the lie. I watched it burn until the heat licked my fingertips, and then I dropped the charred remains into the porcelain sink. I turned on the faucet and washed the ash away. The water swirled gray and black, spiraling down the drain. It was gone. The marriage was gone. The love was gone. All that was left was the war. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dark and hollow, but there was steel in my spine. I was not the victim they thought they had broken. I was the architect of their destruction. I splashed cold water on my face and dried it with a plush towel. I unlocked the door and walked back to the bedroom. I climbed into bed and pulled the duvet up to my chin. I arranged my body to look relaxed, to look like a woman who had finally succumbed to the heavy sedation her husband had been feeding her. I slowed my breathing. I waited. 5 minutes later, the door handle turned. It was a slow, quiet movement. Julian slipped into the room. He was holding a glass of warm milk. The steam rose from it in the dim light. He walked to the side of the bed and sat down gently. The mattress dipped under his weight. "Keisha," he whispered. "Baby, are you awake?" I fluttered my eyelids open. I made my movements heavy and uncoordinated. I looked at him with a soft, unfocused gaze. "Julian," I murmured. "Is it morning?" "No, baby, it is still night," he said. His voice was tender. It was the voice he used when he wanted something. "You were restless in your sleep. I brought you something to help. Just some warm milk with honey. It will help you stay under until morning. You need the rest." I sat up slowly, leaning against the headboard. I looked at the glass in his hand. I knew what was in it. He had crushed more pills. He needed me comatose for the transport. He needed me to be a rag doll when Darius arrived with the van. "You are so good to me," I said. My voice cracked. "I don't know what I would do without you." He smiled. It was a sad, sympathetic smile. The kind you give to a dying pet. "I am just taking care of you, Keisha. That is what husbands do. Here, drink this." He held the glass to my lips. I reached out and took it from him. My hands trembled. I let them tremble. I brought the glass to my mouth. The smell of warm milk masked the bitterness of the sediment at the bottom, but I knew it was there. I looked him in the eyes. I summoned every ounce of acting ability I possessed. I looked at the man who was planning to lock me away and steal my life, and I gave him the one thing he needed to believe he had won. "Thank you, Julian," I said. "I love you." "I love you too, baby," he said. "Now drink." I tilted the glass back. I filled my mouth with the warm liquid. I held it there. I swallowed audibly, making a gulping motion with my throat, but I kept the liquid pooled in my cheeks. I lowered the glass. "It is good," I whispered. "Finish it," he urged. "All of it." I shook my head, letting my eyes droop. "I can't," I slurred. "Too tired." He hesitated. He looked at the half-empty glass. He calculated. He decided it was enough. "Okay," he said, taking the glass from my hand and setting it on the nightstand. "That is enough. Go back to sleep now." He kissed my forehead. His lips felt like a brand. He stood up and walked to the door. He paused and looked back at me one last time. In the shadows, his face was not loving. It was cold and efficient. He was checking his inventory. "Good night, Keisha," he said. "Good night," I mumbled, closing my eyes. He stepped out and closed the door. I heard the lock click. He locked me in. He wanted to make sure I didn't wander. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hall. I waited until I heard the door to his office close downstairs. Then I sat up. I grabbed a handful of tissues from the box on the nightstand. I spit the milk into the tissues. I wiped my mouth. I spit again and again until my mouth was empty. I felt a burning sensation on my tongue from the brief contact with the concentrated drug, but I ignored it. I balled up the wet tissues and shoved them deep into the bottom of the trash can, covering them with used cotton pads. I poured the rest of the milk into the soil of the potted fern on my dresser. I watched the liquid soak into the dirt, disappearing just like my assets had disappeared from his reach. I checked the time on my phone. 3:15 a.m. Darius would be here in less than 2 hours. The van was coming. The trap was set. I stood up and went to the closet. I changed out of my pajamas. I put on leggings and a dark sweater. I put on sneakers. I was not going to be taken out of this house in my sleepwear. I was going to walk out fighting. I checked the burner phone strapped to my thigh. The battery was full. Mike was in position. I sat in the chair by the window and watched the street. The neighborhood was sleeping. The world was quiet. But inside this house, the fuse was burning down. I was terrified. My hands were shaking, and my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. But beneath the fear was a cold, hard resolve. They thought they were taking me to a prison. They didn't know I was bringing the prison to them. I watched the digital clock flip. 3:30, 4:00, 4:30. At 4:45 a.m., headlights swept across the ceiling. A white cargo van turned onto the street. It moved slowly, lights off, prowling like a shark. It pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. "Showtime," I whispered to the empty room. I stood up. I unlocked the bedroom door. I did not hide. I did not run. I stood in the center of the room and waited for my husband to come and betray me one last time. At exactly 5 in the morning, the heavy thud of the front door closing signaled the beginning of my abduction. Julian had carried me down the stairs, grunting under my weight, as I kept my body completely limp, a skill that required immense physical control. He dumped me unceremoniously into the passenger seat of the white cargo van, idling in our driveway. The seat was cold, the vinyl stiff against my back through my thin sweater. I heard him jog around to the driver's side, his breath coming in short, nervous puffs of condensation in the chilly morning air. He climbed in, slammed the door, and locked it. I kept my eyes closed, listening to the sounds of his betrayal. He fumbled with his phone, connecting it to the van's Bluetooth system. He dialed Ashley. "We are mobile," Julian said, his voice thick with adrenaline and triumph. "She is out cold. The triple dose worked. She is practically in a coma." I heard Ashley's laugh through the speakers. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "Good. I am right behind you. Keep it steady. Do not speed. We do not need a cop pulling us over with your wife drooling in the front seat. Just get to the highway. We will be at the facility in 2 hours. And Julian, stop worrying. By noon, we will be drinking mimosas and counting her money." Julian chuckled, putting the van into gear. I felt the vehicle lurch forward as we rolled out of the driveway I had paid for, leaving behind the life I had built. He drove cautiously at first, navigating the quiet suburban streets. I cracked my right eye open just a fraction of a millimeter. The streetlights were flickering past, rhythmic flashes of orange light illuminating his face. He was smiling. It was the smile of a man who thought he had gotten away with murder. We hit the on-ramp for the interstate, but instead of heading south toward the city, Julian veered west toward the mountains. The road grew darker, the streetlights fading away as we entered the winding 2-lane highway that cut through the dense forest reserve. There were no other cars, just us and Ashley's headlights in the rearview mirror. Julian began to hum. It was a tune I recognized. Our wedding song. The audacity of it made my blood boil, warming me against the chill of the van. He was celebrating my demise with the song we danced to on the happiest day of my life. I slowly moved my right hand, sliding it down to my thigh where the taser was taped next to the burner phone. I ripped the tape silent, masking the sound with a groan as if I were shifting in my sleep. Julian glanced at me. "You okay there, Sleeping Beauty?" he sneered. "Don't worry, you won't feel a thing." I gripped the handle of the taser. I waited until we entered a sharp curve, a stretch of road bordered by a steep drop-off on the passenger side and a wall of rock on the driver's side. I sat up. I did not do it slowly. I snapped upright like a corpse rising from a coffin. I reached up and adjusted my hair, smoothing a stray lock behind my ear. "Julian," I said, my voice crisp, authoritative. The voice I used to close million-dollar deals. "You missed the turn." He screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of terror. He jerked the wheel hard to the left, the van swerving violently toward the rock face. "Federal prison is east," I continued, my eyes locking onto his. "You are driving north. That is the wrong direction for a felon. Who are you?" He stammered, his eyes bulging as he fought to correct the swerve. The van skidded, the tires screeching against the asphalt. He looked at me as if I were a ghost. "How are you awake?" "I gave you enough to kill a horse. I have a high tolerance for bullshit, Julian," I said. He tried to lunge for me, taking one hand off the wheel to grab my throat. That was his mistake. I jammed the prongs of the taser into his ribs right between the third and fourth intercostal space and pulled the trigger. The crackle of the voltage filled the cabin. Julian convulsed his body, seizing up as 50,000 volts overrode his nervous system. His foot slammed onto the brake. The van fishtailed, spinning 180 degrees before skidding to a halt mere inches from the guardrail. Dust and gravel sprayed into the ravine below. The engine stalled. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Julian's ragged gasping as he slumped against the steering wheel, paralyzed and drooling. I reached over, put the van in park, and pulled the keys from the ignition. "End of the line, husband," I whispered. Behind us, headlights blinded me through the rear window. Tires crunched on the gravel. Ashley was here. She had seen the van spin out. She parked her luxury SUV bumper to bumper with the van trapping us. I saw her silhouette running toward us in the side mirror. She looked furious. I opened the passenger door and stepped out into the cool morning mist. The forest was silent, watching. I walked to the front of the van and leaned against the hood, waiting. Ashley rounded the corner, her face a mask of rage. She was wearing a trench coat and expensive boots, dressed for a kidnapping like it was a fashion shoot. "What the hell is going on?" she shrieked. "Why did you stop? Is she dead? Did you crash the van, you idiot?" She stopped. She saw me. I was not slumped in the seat. I was standing in front of her, arms crossed, looking very much alive and very much in charge. "Hello, Ashley," I said. "Did you bring the shovel? Or were you planning to use your bare hands to bury me?" Ashley stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. You are supposed to be unconscious." "I am afraid Dr. Stevens' prescription wasn't strong enough," I said. "Or maybe I just decided I didn't want to go to rehab today." "Where is Julian?" she demanded, looking past me to the driver's side, where Julian was groaning, trying to regain control of his limbs. "He is taking a nap," I said. He had a shocking experience. Ashley reached into her purse. I knew what she was reaching for. A gun? A knife? It didn't matter. She never got the chance to use it. From the tree line, floodlights exploded into life, blinding us both. The roar of engines surrounded us. 2 unmarked SUVs tore out of the logging road we had passed 100 yards back, boxing Ashley's car in. Big Mike stepped out of the lead vehicle holding a shotgun casually across his chest. Behind him, 4 uniformed officers and 2 men in FBI windbreakers emerged from the shadows. Ashley froze, her hand still in her purse. "Hands!" Mike bellowed, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Let me see your hands, Ashley, or I will assume you are armed and I will not hesitate." Ashley slowly pulled her hand out. It was empty. She raised her hands in the air, trembling. "What is this?" she screamed at me. "You set us up!" I walked toward her, closing the distance until I could smell her fear. "I did not set you up," I said. "I just let you hang yourself. Do you know who those men in the blue jackets are?" "Ashley?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "They are the FBI," I said. "Financial Crimes Division. It turns out that when you try to transfer $250,000 from a trust fund using a forged signature that I flagged 3 days ago, it raises some red flags. And when I combined that with the evidence of your insider trading using my firm's accounts, well, let's just say they were very interested in your morning commute." "You bitch," Ashley spat. "I will sue you." "You will have a hard time doing that from federal prison," I said. "They have the keylogger data, Ashley. They have the texts. They have the bank records from the Caymans. You aren't going down for assault. You are going down for wire fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. That is 20 years minimum. Mandatory federal sentencing guidelines. I should know. I wrote a paper on it in law school." An officer walked up, spun Ashley around, and slammed her against the hood of her own car. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. "It wasn't me," she wailed as they dragged her away. "It was Julian. He made me do it. He is the one who wanted her money." I watched them stuff her into the back of the cruiser. She kicked and screamed, blaming everyone but herself. Typical. I turned back to the van. Julian had managed to open the door and fall out onto the gravel. He was crawling on his hands and knees, trying to get away. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with terror. "Keisha," he wheezed. "Please, I am sorry. She made me do it. I love you." I looked down at him. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just the cold indifference of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. "Save your breath, Julian," I said. "You are going to need it." I did not let the police take him yet. I had one more loose end to tie up. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. It was a video call. Darius answered on the second ring. He looked terrible. He was in a hospital bed, pale and sweating, tubes running out of his arm. The doctors had pumped his stomach, but the cocktail I gave him had done a number on his system. "Keisha," he croaked. "Where are you? Where is Julian?" "I am with Julian right now." "Darius?" I said, flipping the camera so he could see his brother crawling in the dirt surrounded by police. "We had a little change of plans." "What is going on?" Darius demanded, trying to sit up. "Why are the cops there?" "Julian tried to kidnap me, Darius," I said. "He and Ashley. They were going to put me away so they could steal everything. But that is not why I am calling." I walked over to Julian and shoved the phone in his face. "Say hi to your brother Julian," I said. Julian looked at the screen. "Darius. Help me. She is crazy." I pulled the phone back. "I sent you a video, Darius," I said. "Check your inbox. It is from last night. While you were foaming at the mouth on my rug, your wife and your brother were celebrating." I watched Darius's face as he opened the file on his end. I heard the tiny, tinny sounds of Julian and Ashley whispering sweet nothings, the sound of their kiss. I watched Darius's face turn a shade of purple I had never seen before. The vein in his forehead looked ready to burst. "You," Darius whispered. "You slept with my wife." Julian tried to stand up. "Darius, no, it is a deep fake. She made it up. I am going to kill you." Darius roared, his voice breaking as he tore at his IV lines. "I am going to rip your head off. You are dead, Julian. Do you hear me? I am pulling the protection. The sharks can have you. I will tell them where you are." The line went dead. Darius had thrown his phone against the wall. I looked at Julian. He had heard every word. He knew what that meant. Darius was the only thing standing between him and the debt collectors. Without Darius, the 48-hour deadline was hard and fast. "I am dead," Julian whispered, sinking back to the ground. "They are going to cut me into pieces." I signaled Big Mike. He walked over holding a clipboard. "Get up, Julian," I said. He looked at me, confusion warring with fear. "You are letting me go. I am giving you a choice," I said. I took the clipboard from Mike. It was a document I had drafted myself at 3 a.m. "Option A," I said. "I give the evidence of the poisoning to the cops right now. Attempted murder. You go to prison for 20 years. You will be safe inside. 3 meals a day. Concrete walls." Julian shivered. "And option B?" "Option B," I said. "You sign this. It is an uncontested divorce decree. You admit to adultery and fraud. You waive all rights to my assets, my alimony, and my retirement. You take full legal responsibility for the debt you incurred in my name. And you leave. Right now. You walk into those woods and you figure it out." Julian looked at the woods. Then he looked at the police. Then he thought about the sharks. "If I sign, you won't press charges for the poisoning?" he asked. "I won't give them the toxicology report I lied." "But the sharks, that is between you and them." He grabbed the pen. His hand shook so bad he could barely write. He signed the papers. He signed away his marriage, his home, and his future. "Done," he gasped, dropping the clipboard. "Now let me go." I nodded to Mike. Mike stepped aside. The police officers who had been briefed by Mike that this was a civil negotiation before an arrest stood down. "I had jurisdiction here." "Run, Julian," I said. "Run fast. Because Darius probably just called them." Julian scrambled to his feet. He looked at me one last time. There was no love left, only the hatred of a man who realized he had been outsmarted by the woman he underestimated. "You are a monster," he spat. "I am a lawyer," I corrected. "And I just won my case." He turned and ran into the tree line, disappearing into the mist. I watched him go. I knew he wouldn't get far. A man with no money, no allies, and a $500,000 bounty on his head was a walking ghost. Mike walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay, boss?" I looked at the sunrise breaking over the mountains. The light hit the trees, turning the mist into gold. I took a deep breath of the cold, clean air. "I am better than okay, Mike," I said. "I am single." 3 months later, the city looked different from the penthouse floor of the Kepler building. The view was expansive, stretching from the lake to the financial district. I stood in the center of the office, the smell of fresh paint and new leather filling the air. The bronze plaque on the door read, "Keisha and Associates, Corporate Law and Asset Protection." I walked to the kitchenette in the corner of my office. I filled the electric kettle with filtered water. I selected a tea bag from a wooden box. Earl Grey. I waited for the water to boil, watching the steam rise. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email from the Department of Corrections. A status update. Ashley Vance had pleaded guilty to 4 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of elder abuse. She was sentenced to 15 years in a minimum security facility in Tallahassee. She would be 50 years old when she got out. I deleted the email. I picked up the file next to the phone. It was a report from a private investigator in Mexico. They had found Julian. He wasn't dead. He was living in a hostel in Tijuana, washing dishes for cash under the table. He walked with a severe limp because someone had taken a baseball bat to his kneecap before he crossed the border. He was alive, but he was looking over his shoulder every second of every day. That was enough. Death was too easy. Living in fear was justice. As for Darius, he lost everything in the divorce. His wife in jail, his brother in exile, his assets seized to pay off the debts Julian left behind. He was working construction now, living in a studio apartment, drinking his life away. I poured the hot water into my cup. The aroma of bergamot filled the room. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the city. People were rushing below ants in a maze. I used to be one of them, running, striving, trying to please everyone, trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect professional. I took a sip of the tea. It was hot. It burned my tongue pleasantly. I swallowed. It stayed down. No poison, no sediment, just tea. I turned back to my desk. My assistant walked in, a young, bright-eyed law student who reminded me of myself 10 years ago. "Ms. Vance," she said, "your 10 o'clock is here. The CEO of the Henderson Group. He wants to discuss a hostile takeover defense." I smiled. A real smile. One that reached my eyes. "Send him in," I said. I sat down in my chair. I adjusted my blazer. I was not a victim. I was not a survivor. I was the one who knocked. And business was booming. The screen faded to black as the bass line of a smooth R&B track kicked in, leaving the image of a woman who had walked through fire and came out holding the match. This story serves as a chilling reminder that the most dangerous enemies often hide behind a smile. Keisha's victory teaches us that while love requires trust, survival requires intuition. When your gut tells you something is wrong, whether it is a moved table or a cloudy drink, listen to it. True power isn't just about financial success. It is about maintaining clarity when others try to gaslight you. Never let anyone rewrite your reality or underestimate your intelligence. In the face of ultimate betrayal, a sharp mind and a steel spine are your best weapons. If you enjoyed watching the hunter become the prey, hit like and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Have you ever had to outsmart a toxic partner? Tell us in the comments below.